My name is Eva. I'm 29 years old. I'm an interior designer living in New York, and that day, I had just stepped into the wedding of my dreams. Everything was perfect. The warm golden lights, the soft sound of violins, and the man I loved holding my hand so tightly it made me think nothing could ever pull us apart. And yet, only a few minutes later, in front of hundreds of guests, as glasses clinked in celebration, my mother suddenly stood up, smiled with a strange gleam in her eyes, and invited my sister Sophia to speak. I hadn't even had time to react before Sophia was already holding the microphone, walking slowly up to the stage in a fitted red dress, lips curved as if she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. And then, in front of all my friends, colleagues, relatives, and the glare of cameras, she spoke. Before Eva and Daniel got together, I once shared some secrets with him. The air froze. Every eye turned toward me. I stood paralyzed. Daniel immediately denied it and demanded security escort her out. But my mother rushed forward, shielding Sophia, angrily shouting, "She's only telling the truth. Eva is the one who stole her sister's happiness." Have you ever been stabbed in the heart by your own family on the very day that was supposed to be the happiest of your life? If you've ever been betrayed by your own flesh and blood, share your story in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you're following this story, because what happened after was far worse. I stood frozen in the hall, my hands clutching the bouquet so tightly the roses trembled as if they too were in pain. Not because of what Sophia had said, but because of the way my mother looked at me afterward. She didn't look at me like a mother watching her daughter on her wedding day. She looked at me as if I were an intruder in my own family, as if I had stolen something sacred that should have belonged to my sister. I wasn't surprised. I was just hurt. I once thought time could soften everything, that no matter the wounds of the past, eventually we'd grow enough to forgive each other. But hearing my mother shout in front of everyone that I had stolen Sophia's happiness, I understood something clearer than ever. She had never seen me as her daughter. To her, I was only the shadow behind her princess. From a very young age, I noticed the difference. When I brought home a high score, my mother would point out a spelling mistake instead of praising me. When Sophia flashed a sweet smile and held out her hand, my mother would pour her a glass of orange juice as if it were some sacred ritual. I wasn't jealous. I only tried to understand why love was so unfairly distributed in a family with just two daughters. I remember once when I had a fever, my mother left me alone in a cold room while she drove Sophia to dance class. It was my father who placed a cool towel on my forehead, who made porridge, changed my clothes, and sat by my bed all night. Every time I fell, he was the first to run to me, while my mother only said, "You're old enough to know how to get up on your own." And I did learn how to get up. But the cost was a childhood without the warmth every child deserves from their mother. Sophia was different. She was like a rose kept safe in a glass dome. Just one scratch, and my mother rushed to heal her as if the whole world were about to collapse. I once thought it was because Sophia was more fragile, more sensitive. But eventually I realized it was only an excuse to justify my mother's favoritism. Things became even clearer when we reached our teenage years. I was studious, obedient, joined clubs, worked part-time jobs early. Sophia was busy dating boys with sports cars and designer sneakers. Yet my mother always said, "Eva is smart, but Sophia is the one with natural charm. She was born to be loved." There was a time I dated a kind, intelligent classmate who treated me well. But before long, Sophia began hovering around him. She chatted with him during group meetings, sometimes even sent snacks to his class. I didn't suspect anything, until one day he texted me saying he felt uncomfortable because Sophia had asked to meet privately. I let go. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I was too tired of competing with my own sister. Later, Sophia spread rumors that I was irrationally jealous, that I had pressured my boyfriend to cut off contact with every other girl. When my mother heard the gossip, instead of asking me, she looked at me with disappointment. "You should learn to keep a boyfriend with gentleness, not control." she said. I wanted to ask, and who will teach Sophia about limits, about morals? But I stayed silent, like always. At 18, I packed my things and left that house. I didn't say goodbye to my mother. I only hugged my father for a long time and told him his daughter would be fine. He didn't try to stop me. He just quietly slipped into my hand a small bank book he had been saving for years, in case I needed a new start. I moved to New York, beginning with a tiny room barely big enough for a bed and a desk. I worked all day, studied design at night, took on any project just to afford living expenses. Every week I called my father once, telling him about my life and my work. We avoided mentioning my mother and Sophia. That was how I protected my heart. I didn't return home for the first 3 years, not until my father was in a car accident and hospitalized. I flew back overnight and walked into the hospital to find my mother crying by his bed. Sophia stood on the other side, beautiful and polished, the image my mother always wanted to show the world. But what hurt most was when my mother saw me. She didn't say, "Thank you for coming," or "Your father will be so glad." She only said, "Why didn't you warn me so I could prepare?" I walked into the room, took my father's hand, and he gave me a real smile. He told me not to be sad because of my mother, that he understood everything. I only nodded. When he was discharged, I stayed another week. During that time, I discovered Sophia had caused her best friend to lose her fiancé, and my mother still defended her as if nothing had happened. I left again, for good. Every year I sent New Year's cards, called my father, but I never attended any family gathering if I knew Sophia would be there. My father understood and always tried to arrange things so we wouldn't meet. Until today's wedding. I had been too naive to think my mother would respect my decision, but I had misjudged. She never wanted me to be happy unless Sophia was part of it. And now, as my sister stood in the middle of my wedding, smirking that she once shared secrets with my husband, while my mother shouted before everyone that I had stolen my sister's happiness, I didn't feel shame. I felt anger, not for myself, but for the man standing beside me. He didn't deserve to be dragged into this petty cruelty. No one deserved to endure the poison I had lived with all my childhood. I let the bouquet fall, took a deep breath, and stepped toward the microphone. Not to explain, but to speak the truth. I still remember when I first met Daniel. That project was one of the first big contracts my firm won after I opened my own design office 3 years earlier. The client was a luxury real estate corporation in Manhattan, and Daniel was the technical representative assigned to work with the design team. At the first meeting, he didn't say much, just laid a set of drawings on the table and said, "I hear you have an eye for things." His voice was deep, steady, and his eyes never wavered. I smiled lightly. "And I hear you're difficult." Neither of us intended to go beyond professional discussions. But in the days that followed, sitting together late into the night, revising renderings, choosing materials, testing, lighting layouts dozens of times, I gradually realized there was something genuine about this man. No rush, no show, just solid presence, like the foundation of the buildings he oversaw. A kind of steadiness that made you feel safe without him ever having to say it. Daniel was born in Boston, into a family with 3 sons. His mother passed when he was young, so he learned early how to be independent and take care of others. When I told him about my childhood, he didn't react with pity or surprise. He simply placed his hand over mine and said one sentence: "We don't get to choose where we start, but we can choose where we end up." We loved quietly. No roses, no parties, just evenings cooking together after long days, weekends wandering through old furniture markets, and the times he stopped by my office with a hot coffee because he knew I'd be working late. After 3 years, he moved in with me. After 5, we bought a small apartment in Brooklyn overlooking a park, where every morning I woke to sunlight shimmering on his hair. 7 years together brought many trials. I lost a major project when a client suddenly changed plans. He was injured when a site had an accident. There were days we only lay quietly next to each other, hands still clasped. We didn't have to say it, but we both knew we weren't letting go. When Daniel proposed, there was no kneeling, no diamond ring. Just a Sunday morning, he poured my coffee, set a small wooden box on the table. I opened it to find a simple white gold band and a folded slip of paper with one sentence. "Let's build this final home together." I nodded, tears falling on the napkin between us. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I had never imagined happiness could be so simple, so beautiful. We began planning the wedding. I wanted it warm, intimate, just enough, only the truly important people. Daniel agreed. We chose a garden venue in the suburbs, with willow trees by a small lake, golden string. Lights, tables draped in white cloth, bouquets of lavender mixed with wild daisies. I sat with Daniel all night drafting the guest list. No Sophia, no mother, only my father. He was the one I wanted in the front row, the one who would smile at me with real pride. I called him and said I wanted to keep things quiet to avoid any scars on that day. He didn't ask questions. He only said, "I'll be there and I'll support you, as always." I sent him the wedding invitation by mail along with a handwritten letter. In it, I wrote, "Thank you for always standing in the middle, yet never losing your way. I don't ask Mother to understand me, only that she let me live in peace." 3 days later, my mother called. Her voice was gentle, almost unfamiliar. "You're still my daughter. No matter what, family can't be left behind." I was silent. Then I softly replied, "But no one can force a grown woman to endure more pain, just for the sake of family." I didn't invite her. I didn't stop her either. I only hoped she would respect me enough not to show up. But I was wrong. My mother had never learned how to respect anyone's choices, least of all mine. And today, when she called Sophia up in the middle of the ceremony, in the glow of cameras and the hum of toasts, I realized all those years of avoidance, of rebuilding my life, were never enough for them to let me go. Not because I had done wrong, but because I refused to bow. I was standing behind the curtain of white flowers, waiting for the cue to walk out, when whispers spread through the air like ripples. A college friend leaned close and whispered, "Eva, is that your sister? She just arrived." My heart pounded, my mind blank. I stepped toward the willow tree, where I could see the entrance without being noticed. And then I saw Sophia. She walked in like she was on a Broadway stage, in a deep red dress hugging her curves, hair softly curled, lips painted wine red. Everyone turned to look. Not because she was famous, but because no one expected a stranger's face to appear at a private wedding, carrying herself as if she belonged there. I turned to my father. He was near the refreshment table, talking with some old friends. I rushed over, tugged his sleeve, unable to hide my tension. "Dad, did you invite Sophia?" He looked startled, shaking his head firmly. "No, I thought you didn't want her here." I clenched my hand, trying to stay calm. I didn't even need to ask who was behind this. I pulled out my phone, opened the guest list. No Sophia. No email, no address. I remember I had told the wedding staff not to send invitations to anyone outside the approved list. So then, how did Sophia know the location, the time, and even the dress code? It could only have been my mother. I drew a deep breath. Anger rose through me like a wave of fire along my spine. Still, I kept my eyes cold and my voice steady as I called the event coordinator over. "Check for me who added Sophia Roberts to the guest list." She glanced at her tablet, swiped a few times, then looked at me, slightly uneasy. The one who added her was Mrs. Marjorie Anderson. She confirmed Sophia was the bride's sister and had to be present. Marjorie Anderson, my mother's full name. I gave a bitter laugh, saying nothing more. In my mind, I pictured her in that pale purple dress, sitting in the front row, posture upright, as if she herself were the main character of the ceremony. I turned to my father. "See? She did this behind my back." He sighed, exhaustion flickering in his eyes. "I never imagined. I thought this time she'd respect you." I looked straight at Sophia, who was then chatting with a few unfamiliar guests. One hand resting on her hip, head tilted slightly, that polished smile on her lips. She didn't look at me, not even a glance. From across the lawn, Daniel came quickly toward me, tension clear on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked, quietly, squeezing my hand. I nodded, though my breathing hadn't steadied. I didn't want anything to ruin this day. It had taken me so many years to believe in love again, to believe I deserved a whole beginning. I wouldn't allow anyone to intrude and turn it into another scar. I tightened my grip on Daniel's hand, then turned back toward the ceremony. A bride had to appear on time. That was the promise I made to myself. Even if my heart was aching, I would walk that path with my head held high. Each step down the aisle was a pounding beat in my chest. I saw faces turn toward me, smiles, soft claps. But I also saw my mother's face, seated beside Sophia, her eyes glowing with a satisfaction that was hard to describe. She didn't rise to greet me, didn't smile with tenderness. She merely leaned toward Sophia and whispered something, and both of them smiled as if enjoying a private performance. I turned my face away and walked on, eyes fixed on Daniel waiting ahead. He didn't look at anyone else. When I drew near, he reached out his hand, his gaze steady and gentle as always. "I'm here," he murmured. "We've come this far. No one can take that from us." I didn't answer. I only clasped his hand. Together, we turned toward the officiant. His warm, resonant voice filled the space, beginning what should have been a gentle, perfect moment. But I still felt Sophia's eyes on me from the seats below, as if she were waiting for a moment. As if, in her mind, the ceremony wouldn't be complete until she took the stage, and I sensed it wasn't over. I squeezed Daniel's hand, trying to keep my eyes calm, though inside everything seemed to slow, each word of the officiant echoing faintly, like a knock on a door no one had invited to be opened. We exchanged vows. Daniel looked at me with eyes that had never wavered, tender and true, as if the rest of the world no longer mattered. I almost smiled, almost let myself believe everything would be all right. But then, just as the wedding music began, as white doves were released through the arch and applause rippled like waves, my mother suddenly rose from her seat. "Just a minute, everyone. The bride's sister, Sophia, has a few words she'd like to share." A chill shot down my spine. Daniel's hand gripped mine tighter. I turned to my mother, but she didn't even glance at me. She gestured toward someone backstage. Sophia immediately stepped out, already holding a microphone as if everything had been planned. I couldn't stop her. It happened too quickly. Sophia strode onto the stage to scattered applause from guests, unaware of the undercurrent, smiling brightly as if she were the maid of honor with a special privilege to speak. "Hello, everyone," Sophia began, her voice clear and confident. "I'm Sophia, the sister of the beautiful bride we're celebrating today." A few guests clapped. I stood frozen, spine stiff as stone. Daniel never took his eyes off her, his face darkening. "I wasn't planning to speak," Sophia continued, her tone suspiciously gentle. "But there are old memories that, on a day like this, I think shouldn't be hidden." I felt Daniel shake his head slightly as if warning me. "Does anyone here believe in fate?" Sophia smiled faintly, eyes sweeping over the crowd. "I do. And I believe people come together for a reason, even if they weren't each other's first." Whispers stirred. I held my breath. Daniel stepped forward. Sophia pressed on. Years ago, when Daniel was still a young, ambitious architect, he worked on a project in Boston. At that time, we texted each other a lot. Messages that, if revealed today, might surprise many of you. The entire space felt drained of air. I heard the sharp clatter of a spoon dropped on a plate, the click of phone cameras switching on, and my heart pounded dryly. Daniel stepped fully onto the stage, snatching the microphone from her hand. "That's enough," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cracked like thunder. "What she just said is false. I never had any relationship with Sophia beyond a few meetings through Eva. She's fabricating this, and that is unforgivable. Sophia looked at him, lips curling into a smirk. Are you sure, Daniel? Even if I still have the texts on my old phone? Even if I describe the tiny scar on your wrist, the kind only someone close would know? Daniel turned to me. She's lying. Eva, you know me. I didn't answer. My body felt caught in a cold mist. I glanced down and saw my mother, unmoved, eyes shining with pride as she watched Sophia as if her princess had finally reclaimed the spotlight. The murmurs grew louder. Some guests turned away and left. Others stared at me with pity. Still others leaned forward, curious, like this was nothing more than a juicy scene in a drama. Daniel handed the microphone back to a staff member, then faced me. You don't need to believe anything but the truth we've lived. If you want me to clear this up in any way, I will. I met his eyes. There was no evasion, no fear. Only suppressed anger and disappointment at seeing our day turned into a spectacle. I believe you, I whispered, my voice hoarse. I believe you. But that doesn't make it hurt any less. Sophia stepped down, her smile gone, her eyes hollow. She didn't look at me or Daniel. But before she turned toward the exit, she murmured just loud enough for me to hear. You've always stolen everything from me. I'm only taking back a little fairness. I stood still, tears refusing to fall. Inside, everything felt emptied out, and I realized fairness, to Sophia, had never meant truth. It was just a mask for endless jealousy. And my mother, the one who placed the microphone in her hand, knew it well. But she still chose to do it. Not out of ignorance of the consequences, but because she wanted those consequences. The thud of the first artes, the microphone hitting the floor rang sharp, making the tension even heavier. Daniel didn't need another word. He gestured to security nearby. They approached, firm but calm, escorting Sophia out. She didn't resist, but her gaze swept across the crowd like a silent blade. With a smug, tight smile, she descended the steps slowly, as if she were the victor in a long game. I thought it would end there, but my mother immediately rushed forward, blocking the guards. She spread her arms as if shielding a child from bullies. Her voice rang out sharp and cutting. What are you doing? This is my daughter. She hasn't done anything to be thrown out like a thief. No one responded. Even those close to her kept their distance. Daniel stayed calm, but I could see tension in every line of his body. Mrs. Marjorie, he said, pronouncing each word clearly, this is my and Eva's wedding. Anyone who deliberately disrupts it, whoever they are, is not allowed to stay. My mother whipped around to me, eyes blazing with blame. You're really going to let your fiancé insult your mother and sister like this? I stood frozen, words stuck in my throat. For years, I had kept a sliver of hope that one day she might see me as an individual, not just Sophia's shadow. But that hope dissolved. She hadn't come to bless me. She came to affirm that Sophia was the only one she loved. The staff approached gently, asking if I wanted to pause the reception. I nodded, too drained to continue. The music softened. The seats grew restless, guests whispering. Some left, some raised their phones, some shook their heads, as if watching a ruined play. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran backstage, pushed open the small door to the dressing room. As it closed behind me, tears burst out uncontrollably. I leaned against the wall, sliding down to the floor, shoulders shaking. The heavy dress clung to me like a vise around my chest. The door opened softly. Daniel stepped in, shut it, then knelt in front of me. He didn't speak at first, only lifted his hand to gently wipe a tear from my cheek. I did nothing, Eva, his voice low, steady, firm. I swear to you. I nodded not because I doubted him, but because I felt hollow. A day meant to be tender had become a deep wound. I didn't want to remember, didn't want to mark this as a milestone. I don't blame you, I whispered, but I'm tired. Tired of being dragged into battles I never asked to fight. Daniel gripped my hand, his fingers trembling. We can leave, right now if you want. Just say the word. Before I could answer, the door opened again. My father stood there, worry etched on his face, though he still carried his calm presence. He walked in, looked at us a moment, then sat in a nearby chair. "I'm sorry," he said softly, eyes fixed on me. "I couldn't stop your mother. I never thought she'd go this far." I stayed quiet, my heart sinking. I had never been angry at him. Though he seldom said much, I always felt his protection, quiet and steady. "You don't need to apologize," I murmured. "Just tell me, was all of this, from beginning to end, a trap?" He nodded slowly. "My dear, I'm not sure Sophia originally planned to come, but a few days ago I accidentally saw your mother writing a letter by hand. The address was in Boston. When I asked, she said it was an invitation to an old friend. I suspected, but had no proof. Today, seeing Sophia appear, I understand now." Daniel's hand tightened around mine. "That's not all," my father continued. "An old friend of mine was seated near your mother's table. He told me that right before Sophia went on stage, your mother handed her a small folded piece of paper. Most likely, the speech had been prepared in advance." I looked at him. "Are you certain?" "He's a careful man. He sent me a photo from his phone. It clearly shows your mother handing something to Sophia. Do you want me to send it to your lawyer?" I glanced at Daniel. He gave a slight nod. "Maybe we don't act on it today," Daniel said. "But later, if we need to protect our reputation, at least we'll stop them from twisting the story." I straightened up, my breathing steady again. I had cried enough. I used to think tears meant weakness, but Daniel never turned away from me, and neither did my father. They let me be fragile so I could rise stronger. I held Daniel's hand and looked at my father. "I'm not afraid anymore. They can't touch me unless I let them." My father pulled up the photo his friend had sent. It was slightly blurry, taken from behind, but clear enough to show my mother passing Sophia a small piece of paper, folded into quarters. Sophia glanced at it once, then tucked it straight into her red clutch, matching her dress. I stared at the photo, not shocked, only hollow. Everything had been staged. From Sophia's sudden appearance to the way my mother waited for the calmest moment to unleash chaos, it was all intentional. Nothing was spontaneous. My father stayed quiet for a moment, then lifted his gaze. "There's one more thing. I wasn't going to say it, but now I think you need to know." I looked up. Daniel leaned closer, still holding my hand. My father spoke slowly. "3 days ago, when I went to pick up the suit your mother had taken for alterations, I overheard her on the phone. The door was ajar. I didn't catch everything, but one name she repeated over and over was Lucas." I flinched. Daniel sat upright, his eyes darkening. Lucas. A name that had kept us awake for months. Lucas was Daniel's former business partner in a smart city project in Philadelphia. They had been close, launching the venture from scratch together. But it all changed when Lucas hid certain clauses in the materials contract, leaving Daniel liable to the client and costing him over $100,000. After that, Daniel withdrew, sold his shares, and cut ties. I still remembered those nights when Daniel sat at his desk until 3 a.m., trying to fix the fallout. And Lucas? He sent a cold, one-line apology, then quietly shifted his company under a new name and disappeared. I turned to Daniel. He didn't speak, only gave a slow nod. "Lucas was the one man who ever made me lose control," Daniel said evenly. "If he's truly tied to this." My father nodded. Those two, Sophia and Lucas, were calling each other. I didn't hear it all, but Sophia's voice was soft, nothing like at home. She even called him Luke, very familiar. I almost confronted her, but knowing wouldn't have changed anything. I closed my eyes, inhaling sharply. I could almost see the invisible strings pulling at my wedding like a play staged with precision. Sophia had always charmed those with power, especially anyone with a grudge against me. And Lucas? Even if he no longer cared about Daniel, for someone like him, reappearing in a scandal, under the guise of exposing an old partner, would be a prize. Daniel's voice cut through, calm but razor-sharp. So Sophia didn't sabotage this day just out of jealousy. She's working with someone. Or at least teaming up with a man who once tried to ruin me. I stayed silent. Part of me wanted to scream, to storm out and demand from my mother why. How could she do this to me on the happiest day of my life? But I didn't. I had already walked away from her once. Now, I didn't need to run. I would face her. I turned to Daniel. I don't want this wedding to end in silence. I don't want everyone leaving with a twisted version of the story. His eyes searched mine. Then what do you want to do? I stood, wiping away the last of my tears. My dress wrinkled from sitting, but I didn't care. I looked at my father. Send that photo to my lawyer, and if possible, keep any recordings or details of that call I may need. He nodded without question and began forwarding the image. I turned to Daniel, gripping his hand. Right now, I'm going back out there, just to tell the truth. No long speech. Just enough. Daniel squeezed my hand, then stepped ahead to lead me out of the dressing room. We walked down the corridor. Staff were resetting tables, straightening chairs. Guests lingered in small groups, whispering. Their eyes turned to me, not curious now, but expectant, as if waiting for me to reclaim the narrative. I stepped onto the stage. Without a microphone, I spoke clearly enough for all to hear. I'm sorry for the disruption. What happened should never have marred such a sacred day. But I will not let those who seek to poison love and dignity take control of the story. I paused, scanning the crowd. Daniel and I built our life from nothing. We endured hardships not to become pawns of personal schemes. If you want the truth, look at how we stand. We don't hide, we don't flee, we don't bow. Applause broke out, not loud but genuine. Daniel stepped forward, wrapping an arm around me. I glanced at the seats. My mother was gone. Sophia too. They had chosen to withdraw or perhaps to wait for another strike. But I wasn't the same girl anymore, and Daniel wasn't a man to be manipulated. We stood under the golden lights, not to erase the wounds, but to show we hadn't fallen. From now on, anyone who tried to enter my life would have to pass through the gate of truth, not the shadows of deceit. As the garden quieted, tension lingered. Eyes still searched for closure, for assurance that what had happened wouldn't be brushed aside. Daniel caught my gaze, then reached into his pocket. Pulling out his phone, he opened a string of messages and stepped to the podium. He wasn't one for public speeches, but his voice carried steady, each word sharp and deliberate. Thank you for staying calm. But some things need to be clarified before we continue. He held up his phone. These are text exchanges between Lucas Winston and Sophia Roberts, spanning from last month through this week. They're time-stamped and backed up. I've already sent them to legal counsel. Whispers spread. Daniel continued. In these texts, Lucas repeatedly invited Sophia to join in a plan to shake my professional image and personal life in front of the media and partners. His words. At first, Sophia hesitated, but then she suggested framing me in a compromising situation and spinning a story of an unfinished romance. It's all here. He scanned the room, calm but firm. She never had any relationship with me, imagined or otherwise. What she said today was staged fiction. Daniel handed the phone to staff, who projected the messages onto the big screen. Lines appeared, sharp and undeniable. Silence fell as guests read. I'll handle the media. You just make Eva doubt. He's weak on morals. Hit him emotionally, push him to react wrong, and everything crumbles. My mom's on board too. She thinks if Eva fails, she'll come back home. Relief swept over me, replacing fury. My instincts had been right. Daniel had never betrayed me. From a nearby table, Ellen, my former coworker, stood. I worked with Eva for 3 years. We pulled all-nighters, traveled for projects. Daniel always showed up, waiting outside for hours if needed. I never once saw him look at anyone but Eva. Then Alan, my father's old friend, rose. I lived next to Eva in Brooklyn. My kids adore Daniel. He'd play with them in the yard. I saw him care for Eva after her accident. That's no act. Don't let lies undo that. The air shifted, suspicion turned into solidarity. Applause rose. Some guests stepped forward to shake Daniel's hand. I watched his eyes soften, not in triumph, but in relief. He returned to me, passing me the microphone. I took it. Steady now. Thank you for listening, and I need to add one last thing. I glanced at the screen, where the final lines glowed. Besides Lucas, Sophia has been involved in something else I hadn't planned to mention today. But since some people don't understand limits, I have no choice but to speak. I unlocked my phone and read out loud. In 2021, Sophia had an affair with her best friend's fiancée, a woman she had been close to since college. I'm not making this up. That friend, her name is Meredith, once emailed me for help when everything came to light, but my mother demanded she stay silent. I didn't say anything back then because I thought Sophia's mess was no longer my concern. But today, since she chose to twist my life into a false narrative, I have no reason to remain silent any longer. The entire room erupted into chaos. No one expected that revelation. No one imagined Sophia had destroyed her best friend's engagement, and the bitterest part was that she had always played the victim. I continued, my voice calm. We are not trying to humiliate anyone, but when someone smears another's dignity with lies, the only way to cleanse it is with the truth. I paused, scanning the room. I don't want my wedding to become a subject of mockery or a weapon for someone's schemes. From this moment on, Daniel and I will not allow anyone to enter our lives through lies and harm, not even blood relatives. I handed the microphone back to the coordinator. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind. Applause began to swell, stronger and steadier. Not because I had given a grand speech, but because everyone understood we had just crossed something very difficult. Not because others believed us, but because we dared to speak the truth. And the truth, however raw, is always the firmest foundation. As the applause softened, I saw my mother rise from her seat on the left. Her posture was straight, her lavender silk dress shimmering under the golden lights, making her stand out even more than me, the bride at her own wedding. Her face showed no embarrassment, no shame. Instead, her expression was one of betrayal. She stepped into the aisle, her heels striking sharply against the carpeted stone floor. Guests started whispering again. Some raised their phones, not just from curiosity, but because they sensed what was coming wouldn't end with mere words. Eva, my mother's voice rang out, her eyes locked on me, full of reproach. You've been too selfish. I didn't raise you to live this way. I looked at her silently. I didn't intend to argue in front of a crowd. I didn't need to justify what was already clear. Sophia just wanted a little attention, my mother pressed on, turning to the guests as though to seek their sympathy. She didn't hurt anyone, she only felt abandoned. And you couldn't even invite your own sister to your wedding? That's cruel. Daniel stepped forward, about to intervene, but my father had already stood up from a nearby row. His voice wasn't loud, but it was granite strong. Marjorie, enough. My mother whipped around, stunned by his interruption, but my father didn't stop. I've kept quiet for years. I've watched you play favorites, watched you wound Eva, watched you make everything revolve around Sophia. I thought maybe I could balance it with my own love. But today, you've gone too far. My mother lifted her chin, trying to maintain composure. You're blaming me for protecting my child. No, my father said firmly. I blame you for choosing one child and turning the other into a shadow. I blame you for knowing exactly what Sophia was doing and still aiding her. You're not protecting your daughters. You're pushing them over a cliff. Silence blanketed the space. Guests sat frozen, cameras already recording every word. You don't understand, my mother snapped, her voice beginning to shake. You've always been soft with Eva, always treating her like the victim. But she's the one who's cold, who's distant. Because you pushed her out, my father cut in. Ask her what she endured all those years while you handed everything to Sophia. A mother should never divide her children like that. I bit my lip, holding back tears. I had grown used to my father's silence, but today, before everyone, he spoke the words I had never dared. My mother took a step back, but her eyes remained hard. So what now? Divorce? Over a wedding? No, my father said softly, but with finality. Because of too many years with a wife who only ever saw one child. Because I refused to live the rest of my life in silence and disappointment. My mother froze. You wouldn't dare. I would. My father nodded. And I will. The whispers surged again, like waves breaking. Some guests turned away, unwilling to watch. Others couldn't tear their eyes from the scene unfolding like a play too gripping to look away from. My mother stepped back, then suddenly spun on her heel, pulling out her phone as she strode toward the exit. Her heels struck the stone floor with sharp, cold echoes. I stood there, not feeling victorious, not relieved, just empty. The people I called family were fracturing in front of me, on the very day I was meant to begin a new journey. I hadn't chosen this, but I couldn't keep being dragged into their toxic whirlpools. Daniel squeezed my hand. You okay? He whispered. I nodded faintly. I don't know what to call this feeling, but I know it needed to happen. My father stepped closer, resting a hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry I let it go this far. But today, you did what even I never had the courage to do. I'm proud of you. I met his gaze and saw, for the first time, not just love but absolute trust. I didn't need words of defense anymore. I needed people willing to stand beside me. A phone rang from somewhere behind us. A woman exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's online already." I turned, catching the glow of her screen. It was a clip of my parents' argument, already reposted by a social media account that specialized in high society scandals. The headline blared, "Chaos at Designer. Eva Anderson's wedding mother accuses, father demands divorce on stage." I exhaled. I wasn't surprised. Anything played out in the open could never stay private. I just hadn't expected it to spread this fast. Daniel looked at me. We can leave now, if you want. I shook my head. No, I'm done running. If they've dragged everything into the light, I'll let the light show the truth. Another guest stepped forward, Uncle Roger, my father's old school friend. Eva, he said warmly, I won't intrude on family matters, but I've watched you grow. Fight for yourself and stand tall. Don't ever let anyone make you think you're undeserving. I bowed my head in thanks. Amid the turmoil, those kind words felt like a small lantern guiding the way. I turned back to Daniel, gripping his hand. Let's continue. Because anyone who leaves today wasn't meant to stay. I returned to our apartment near midnight, after the last guests had gone and the garden venue was stripped down to bare tables and faint lights. The heavy wedding dress was packed neatly away, but the chill lingered down my spine all the way home. Daniel softly asked if I wanted something to drink, but I shook my head. I needed quiet, not to cry. To think. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop. The glow lit my tired face, no longer fragile. I didn't write out of rage. I didn't type like someone venting fury. I wrote with the clarity of someone who had endured every storm and was still standing. I typed word by word, like clearing dust from an abandoned house. My name is Eva Anderson. I got married yesterday. That wedding should have been a beautiful memory. But I must speak, because silence kept for years only convinces people they can keep hurting others without consequence. I grew up in a family of 2 daughters. I was the eldest. My sister's name is Sophia. We were not alike. I was quiet, steady, building things with my own hands. Sophia was the opposite. She wanted everything instantly, believing if it wasn't hers, then someone had stolen it. Throughout my childhood, I was never the favored child. My mother, Marjorie, poured every bit of love into Sophia that she never spared for me. That's fine. I never asked for equal love. I only asked for fairness, but I never had it. I once dated a boy in high school. Sophia interfered, spread lies, and destroyed it. My mother didn't stop her. She told me it was my fault for not keeping him. My first big project after starting my career, Sophia sent anonymous letters to investors to damage my reputation. My mother dismissed it as a little jealousy, nothing serious. I thought leaving the city, building my own life, would bring peace. But those who can't let go of control will never let others live free. I didn't invite Sophia to my wedding. I had the right. It was my day, mine and Daniel's. But my mother secretly sent an invitation, letting Sophia step into the ceremony as part of a plan I never knew about. Sophia didn't come to bless us. She came with a prepared speech, claiming she had once been intimate with Daniel before we dated. That was a lie. A staged act, with help from Lucas Winston, Daniel's former partner, cut off years ago for dishonesty. I don't need to say more. I'll let the evidence speak. Beneath those lines, I attached screenshots of Sophia and Lucas's texts, blurred, frantic words, but clear in intent. I'll stage it. You handle media. She didn't invite me, then we'll just show up. My mom will help. My sister only looks tough. I want to see how long she lasts. I didn't edit a thing. I left in their typos, their messy phrasing. I wanted everyone to see this wasn't fabricated. These were scraps of a real plan, whispered in secret, aimed at me, the one who had walked away from their games years ago. I ended the post with one line. I don't need pity. I just want those who are wrong to be held accountable. I pressed post. Within minutes, the first alert appeared. 5 people shared your post. After half an hour, 27 people are engaging. An hour later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages from friends, coworkers, acquaintances, even people who had only followed me from a distance. They all said the same thing, finally you spoke. Some people sent me screenshots from large social media groups buzzing about the incident. Someone even dug up a clip of Sophia stepping onto the stage at the wedding, comparing it side by side with the text she had once sent Lucas. A popular business news site shared my post as well, with the headline, Eva Anderson Strikes Back, the truth behind the wedding that shocked social media. I didn't feel relief, but I did feel clarity. Daniel came over and placed his hand on my shoulder. Do you regret it? I shook my head. No, because I didn't speak to retaliate. I spoke because I don't want to be twisted anymore. He nodded, his eyes softening. The next morning, I received a message from an old friend of Sophia's, someone I hadn't spoken to since college. She sent me a short audio recording, just over a minute long. In it, Sophia's voice was frantic, trying to shift the blame. I only followed Mom's plan. I didn't think it would blow up like this. Lucas said he'd handle the press, but it all slipped out of control. I don't want to go to jail for this. I forwarded the recording to my lawyer, saying nothing more. Because for the first time in years, I didn't need to say anything. The truth was spreading on its own. And this time, it wasn't through someone else's mouth. It came from theirs. Messages, articles, comments they poured in like a relentless wave after my post went viral. I didn't read them all. I didn't want to count how many supported or criticized me, but one thing was undeniable: the truth had spoken. And it had begun to reach those who once thought they could control everything forever. 3 days after the wedding chaos, Sophia abruptly deleted all her social media accounts. Those who used to be close to her, even her old college circle, went silent, or openly voiced support for me. I didn't seek it out, but a few people sent apologies. Some even called, saying, "We never imagined Sophia would go that far." One of Sophia's former closest friends, Monica, sent me a private message. "Eva, I never thought I'd have to write this, but after everything Sophia has done, I need to say it, I'm sorry. She didn't just damage your reputation, she shattered so many relationships around her. I was a victim too, I just never had the courage to speak." I replied briefly, without bitterness. "Thank you for telling the truth. Sometimes that's enough." The news of Sophia losing her job came quickly. The event design company where she worked, an organization that prized its professional image, formally terminated her contract after the leaked messages with Lucas spread. No company wanted an employee tied to a public scandal, especially one built on deception that reached into the business world. My mother, Marjorie, didn't react right away. She disappeared from social media for days, didn't call me, didn't send a message. I didn't know if she was angry, ashamed, or simply powerless. But I guessed she wouldn't stay silent for long. And I was right. A week later, as Daniel and I were packing for our honeymoon in Santorini, my father called. His voice was weary but resolute. "Your mother wants to meet to discuss inheritance." I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching Daniel's hand as he folded clothes. "About what, Dad?" "She says you've ruined Sophia's future. That Sophia has no place in the industry anymore. Her reputation and income are gone. So your mother is asking me to change my will." I stayed silent for a moment, then asked, unable to hide the bitterness in my voice, "Change it how?" "To give everything to Sophia, the house, the land, my shares in the company. She says if I don't, Sophia won't survive." I clenched my fists. Daniel sat beside me, calm but wary. "What did you say?" I asked. "I said no." He exhaled slowly. "I told her the child I need to protect is the one who never used manipulation to climb, the one who never weaponized being family to hurt others. I told her Eva deserves what I built, and I won't change my mind." I sat still, my throat tight. "Dad, I don't need any of it, truly, if it brings you more conflict with her." "No," he cut me off, his voice firm. "I'm not doing this because you need it. I'm doing it because it's right." I didn't say another word. Not because I was speechless, but because I wanted my heart to feel fully what it meant to have someone stand with me unconditionally. That evening, we left the city, flying overnight to Greece. After all the chaos, the white stone streets and the deep blue sea eased every jagged corner inside me. Daniel and I didn't talk much. We walked for hours, drank white wine at sunset, and I slept deeply, dreamlessly. On the third morning at the hotel, a cream envelope was waiting on our table. No sender listed. The receptionist said someone had delivered it by hand, refusing to give a name. I opened it. Inside was a photo taken in a law office. Sophia sat across from a tall, broad man with salt and pepper hair in a gray suit. On the desk lay a stack of files stamped with the seal of one of New York's most prestigious law firms. I stared at the photo. Daniel came closer, picked it up, then set it back down. Neither of us spoke, but we both knew what it meant. Sophia hadn't given up. She was turning to the law as her weapon. I lifted my phone, opened my email, and sent a short note to my attorney, attaching the photo. "Looks like we need to prepare for another step." Daniel stood behind me, his hands resting gently on my shoulders. "Whatever it is, I'm here." I nodded, my eyes fixed on the screen. I don't regret being born into a family I never chose, but I'm no longer bound by it. If Sophia chooses to fight with schemes, I will face her with truth. I don't know whether to call what I've endured a wound or an awakening, but I believe one thing sometimes: what we never wish for is what forces us to grow, to choose, and to confront reality. I don't hate my mother. I no longer resent Sophia, but I won't let family ties be an excuse for repeated cuts. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and strength doesn't mean letting others trample your trust again. And you, what about you? If it were you, would you stay silent to keep the peace, or speak up to protect your worth? To you, is family an unbreakable bond, or a place where boundaries must be drawn when it strips you of yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly want to hear your stories and perspectives. And if you care about family relationships, how we love and how we hurt each other, and the journey of finding yourself amid the most tangled knots, hit subscribe. Because there are so many stories still waiting to be told, with all the honesty they deserve. Thank you for staying with me this far. And if you can, stay longer so we can meet again in another story. One about family, or maybe about courage.